Hey everyone, this is Allan McKay, and welcome to episode 6. I'm going to be interviewing Sean Ritchie from Walking Dead, and that's it. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay Podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Hey everyone, this is Allan McKay, and I'm going to be introducing an interview between myself and artist Sean Ritchie, who is one of the key artists working out in Georgia where they shoot the TV show The Walking Dead. So this is a really cool interview. It's very insightful and a lot of fun. Sean was a great guy to talk to, and I was hoping to actually go by the set because I'm in the neighborhood at the moment, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to make it out there. But that's it for now. I just want to say thanks again for everyone who's been writing reviews on iTunes. And at the end of this month, I've got a contest. So if you're interested in winning a 1-month subscription for digital tutors, then simply go to my Facebook and click like. And then on iTunes, simply subscribe to my podcast and write a quick review. That's pretty much it, and just look on the show notes for more information. But at the end of the month, I will be giving away multiple memberships. So these are worth a lot of money, and they're very cool, so check it out. That being said, let's get into this interview. What's your background like? Obviously, you're from Georgia, right?
Yeah, I grew up here in Atlanta, and I actually went to school for computer animation at Art Institute. And actually, straight out of school, I got into architecture for 8.5 years. And then when the economy started to collapse, I was just basically fishing for any 3D work I could find. And the girl I was seeing at the time happened to know somebody that worked on the show, and I submitted my portfolio, my architectural portfolio, and got a call within a week, and just kind of fell right into it. And I was a Max user doing all my architectural rendering, and basically first day on the job I had to pick up doing shots in Maya and learn Maya all at the same time. And it just kind of was getting thrown into the deep end of the pool and had to learn to sink or swim.
Yeah.
It was very, very different because in architecture rendering, you're doing stills. So, I mean, we would do some fly-throughs, but nothing as far as tracking actors and doing proper placements and stuff like that. So, it was very intense the first few months. But over the past couple years and getting a few seasons under my belt, it's just been growing and constantly learning new stuff and trying to be a better artist and build my arsenal of skill sets.
That's great. Actually, just curious, like, for you, the whole sink or swim mentality, did that work out well for you? Because, I mean, I kind of find that, it's typically people who are, they go to learn, they go to school, let's say they're going to learn at the pace they need to, but it's like when you've got deadlines, everything else, it's pretty amazing how quickly you pick things up when you've got that no turning back kind of mentality. You've got to kind of get things done. So I don't know, for you, like, did you find that like a couple of weeks of doing that with a gun to your head was a lot more effective than like a year of learning?
Honestly, I do. I think the pressure motivates me to get it done, and I'm that personality type that I operate better with the pressure. It forces me to learn what I need to do and problem solve. And that's probably the best part about this is I'm always challenged. No matter what, I'm never bored or stuck doing the same thing. It's always a new problem that comes up and trying to figure out how to fix it in the fastest amount of time possible.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so Walking Dead, was that one of your first projects?
That was my very first project.
Wow. That's cool. So you've been doing this for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I started beginning of season 3, and been going hard ever since. I did some work on Doctor Who for season 7. We do some work on House of Lies. What else? Grey's Anatomy, NCIS. We just finished up a film called Parlor. It's a horror flick, but since we do pretty much gore, mainly gore here in Atlanta, they kind of come to us for those kind of shots. So it's definitely been a crazy journey over the past couple of years, because this was my dream job. Was to get into television and film, and yeah, 3 years to be doing this, I would have told you no way, because there wasn't really the industry here in Georgia. It's all based out in LA. So the fact that things have been moving here has given more opportunity to visual effects artists, 3D artists, 2D artists. It's just adding another avenue for work, whereas you were limited to West Coast. Now you're not.
Yeah.
So the work's coming here, and that's it's definitely promising, especially with, you've got Marvel that's going to be filming here, James Bond. They're all moving here because they build Pinewood Studios right down the street. So it's they're doing a lot more feature film work here. So it's the prospects are very promising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Like, I was in New Orleans and Baton Rouge like a year or two ago, and at the time, suddenly they were doing. I keep forgetting Tom Cruise's film, Oblivion. They were doing that there, doing a few other big films there, and it's kind of funny because especially I like saying Baton Rouge just because like it is a pretty small place, and then suddenly to have like Hollywood kind of open up shop like literally, and start doing big projects there, it's nuts. And that's the thing, is like it's always been kind of limited to Hollywood and New York. And now things are completely changing, and I do know a lot of people in LA kind of look at it negatively just because it's the insecurity of things shifting. But I kind of find it to be pretty exciting because now suddenly everyone in the world can have access to all these great projects, because there's so much talent out there, and it's more about the fact that there's always been like this limitation of like, typically if you're not in LA, then people won't talk to you just because it's like the whole Hollywood bubble. And now, like London, mm-hmm. Vancouver, even New York is trying to get a lot more. Montreal, obviously Georgia, you guys are doing a lot of cool stuff too. Louisiana, like it's actually kind of become a bit more of a open playing field, which has been really cool.
Well, I think the fact that technology is the rate that that's going, and that you can set up remote offices. I know ILM has been testing that recently, mm-hmm. with instead of bringing the artists to them, they're sending out machines to the artists that can remote in. So wherever the artist is, they can work and use remote services. So adding that flexibility, I think, is just going to expand the industry even more, and just make it more convenient, make access to projects a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's pretty cool. Like, I'm kind of excited to kind of see where things go. So yeah, and you're right. Like ILM, like they actually set up an LA office for Transformers and a few other projects, and it was just all TCP over IP. No, PCP over. God, it's too early in the morning. PC over IP. But yeah, it's pretty cool because I mean they can literally just set up a studio, run it, and then when it's time, shut it back down, and when they need to, dust it off and run it again, just because the servers or the hardware is still in their office in San Francisco. It's just basically they've got a keyboard and a screen wherever the artists are, and that I think also works really well for them, just because typically their turnarounds are about a year a project, and if people have got to fly to San Francisco, I mean a lot of people still are in LA, so if they've got to relocate to San Francisco or now to Vancouver, and leave their family behind while they do it, which a lot of the guys were doing, it's not exactly something really fun. And I've seen a few guys do that, where they finish, they go back, and then literally a month later get a call to come back again. And so to actually go where the talent is actually means that you get the best of both worlds. The artists get to stay with their family, and they get to do all the work and get the talent. So yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely in a world now where we've got the technology, we can kind of showcase that. One other thing, there's a company called Scarecrow who they're trying to completely make their studio completely virtual. So they're doing a lot of cool stuff. They've got a lot of talent from like ex-Pixar and ILM. They're trying to set up a whole pipeline for doing that stuff all remote. So they have producers in place to check on stuff, and as far as studios are aware, it's all kind of like a normal studio like anywhere else, but they do it all remote. And I think there's like pros and cons to doing that, but I do love the idea of like you don't need to travel across the world to go work somewhere for 6 months and then come back again. So I do love that.
Yeah, that makes it a little hard on having a personal life.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's cool in your 20s, because for me it's always like, okay, great, I'm going to New York, I'll call my buddies and we'll meet at the bar and get shit-faced drunk for a few weeks. But yeah, especially when you get a bit older, it's a bit more tough to manage if you got family and everything else.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a younger man's game to be able to travel like that. I think once I hit my 30s, I was like, okay, I can't do that kind of stuff. It's
Yep. But that's cool, and it's kind of interesting you mentioned architecture, because most people have had on the show, or at least I'm about to put on the show, everyone seems to be coming from architecture. It's kind of nuts. Like, probably the last 8 people I've spoken to have all come from an architectural background. So maybe there's a connection there, but do you think that at all has benefited you in what you're doing day to day at the moment? Not that buildings and blood and guts got too much to do with each other.
Well, you learn the key elements with architectural rendering. It's all about realism. You have to get realistic lighting. Your shaders and textures, they've got to look real, because the client's looking for a visualization, a photorealistic visualization of their final product. So I think you learn key skills in that aspect that carry over, because lighting is 99% of what gives the realism to the shot. If you've got flat lighting, you're going to be able to tell. It's going to look fake and pasted on. Whereas you get a good dynamic lighting setup, it's really going to make it pop. And being able to get the realism in my stills, it was just being able to carry that skill set over into animating things and moving things through the light pools and different light rigs. So I think in that aspect, it very much helped contribute to what I'm doing now. And when I'm teaching junior 3D artists, and they're wanting to have a project to get them started, I always tell them, like, build me a building. Go ahead, model it, texture it, and light it, and make it look as real as possible. Because if you can do all that, then we can get you into the animating process after that. But start with those foundation skills first, and we can build on that.
Cool, but this is great. So just looking at your typical stuff that you're doing for Walking Dead, I mean, what's probably the most common stuff that you're doing? I'm assuming it's going to be a lot of fluids and effect stuff, but what do you find is the most popular thing that you guys have to do a lot of?
Proper placement. Because they're using, when they do the melee kills and stuff, they're stabbing or whatever, they're just holding a handle. So a lot of it is hand tracking in rebar, or a lot of knives. All the arrow shots, all that's CG. They don't use any practical arrows. And a lot of katana work.
I bet.
And I'm actually on my 4th version of the katana, to where it really starts blending in with the scene. Because at first it was more of, you're dealing with a lot of motion blur, so it's just got to be somewhere in the middle. But to add the realism to it and to get the good reflections on the blade when she's holding it still, it required a better model for the scenes, something that was more flexible and adaptive, no matter what the scene was. If it was dark, a dark scene, or if they're outside or something like that, I just needed more flexibility to it. So that's been most of what we do, along with herd shots. where we're using Gollum as our crowd simulation.
Hmm.
Um, we started using Massive, but Gollum actually works better with our pipeline
And why is
uh,
that?
because of the specifics that we have set up. I mean, uh, we had Massive on a Linux machine, but um, Gollum, it was cheaper. It was actually just a cheaper way to go, and you got good results out of it. And um, we've actually been looking at My Army uh, because that seems to have great AI interaction. So it's the herds are definitely a big part, but it's I find that Golem's definitely easier once you get the setup going.
I noticed that Pixelmondo, I was there in Berlin, and they had they had massive setup there, and they had such a nightmare trying to get it to actually install and get licensed and working properly that they ended up, once they'd finished the project, like keeping a massive box, and they just kept it under their desk. So if they ever need to do another massive project, they could literally just plug it in and it's all set up to go, because they spent so much time trying to get it to actually just function the way it needed to in the first place. But massive, that's one thing. Like if you don't have a big enough support team, it's kind of like Random Man. You definitely require a lot of like setup time, rather than being like, okay, well, out of the box, let's just get going. So it's definitely an investment, and if you're not doing a shit ton of crowds all the time, whether or not it's going to be too beneficial or not is definitely one thing, and also pricing wise too.
Well, I mean, with the zombie herds, you're not having a lot. It's not like a big battle scene where you have to have a bunch of AI running. You basically have shuffling, motion captured zombies that you just need to populate a scene with. So it doesn't need too much AI interaction.
Yeah, and what's your typical studio pipeline? Like you mentioned, you do a lot of Maya, and I guess a little bit of Max. What tools are the main ones you use for production?
We use Maya with V-Ray. We're actually looking to get V-Ray 3.0 because everything I've been reading on it and testing the betas, the difference between version 2 and version 3 has been incredible.
Yeah, it's great.
And then we feed into After Effects for our compositing, and we're using Buju and PF Trackit for our tracking software.
Mm-hmm. When you're using both Buju and PF Track, is there a specific reason that you split it up, or are you going to use one more for object tracking, or is it just more that Buju might do certain shots more efficiently than PF Track?
Well, we were originally on Buju, and that's what a lot of people learned on. And then as we've been transitioning over into PF Track, you still have some artists that like Buju. That's what they're comfortable with. And when you get locked into a certain technique, it's always a little bit intimidating to learn on the fly a new tracking software to get the same results. So when I first started learning how to track, I was using Buju 100%. And making the transition over to PF Track, it's been a little bit difficult because just the whole entire node setup's different. So it's changing the way you approach the project. But you get better results. I've been trying to figure out a better solution for object tracking because most of the weapon stuff I'm doing frame by frame hand tracking, because they're moving too fast, the motion blur is too heavy, so PF Track isn't picking up on that as well. And at the same time, I'm always learning, so I'm always reading articles to see if someone's able to perfect that technique and then apply it to what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever get any tracks that are just a nightmare to do, or worse, what the talent's doing is not exactly what the CG should be doing?
Oh yeah. And for those, I work very closely with the 2D artists here that there's constant communication, like, hey, this is not working, or you need to reanimate the arm so it tracks better and I know what I'm tracking to. And a lot of times you don't have the time to really work out the kinks in the track, so it's just faster to hand track it. Just nudge it in place and go, and let 2D correct some of the tracking, and hand animate it closer into its tracking points on the performance. So when you're on a week deadline, it's pretty much get it done as best you can in the amount of time you have.
Actually, it's kind of funny. I've worked on a few projects where like I've come in just to kind of say hi to the guys or whatever, and there's been those situations where they're trying to do a track and it's not quite working out the way they want, or trying to get something like that done, and I've jokingly said like, well, just throw a lens flare over it and call it a day. And then the worst part is when they're like, yeah, that's right, like we'll just do that, and I'm like, no, I was kidding, and suddenly there's like a lens flare just popping on the screen to blind out the so obviously I don't think you guys have the luxury of throw magic lens flares in when you need to. But what's the typical turnaround for an episode? I mean, obviously there's a lot of different stuff that you're doing. There are going to be some that are more demanding than others, but typically when you have an episode come in, how many people are typically on it, as well as how long's the turnaround for one of those projects?
Our turnaround per episode's usually a week to 2 weeks, depending on how heavy the shot load is for the episode. There is 7 artists here in Atlanta, 2D artists. I'm the only 3D artist here in Atlanta, but we have our LA facility as our home base, and the talent out there is incredible. So it's split up between our multiple facilities. We're here in Atlanta, we're in LA, we're in Vancouver, Toronto, Dubai, Germany, and Malta.
Wow.
So
I didn't know you guys were so global.
yeah, we've got a lot of good projects going on. There's a Middle East project called The Palace that was it's a lot of, all the environments are 3D. It's that green screen previs workflow where they're shooting live action and then it's all comped into the CG environment, and a lot of baking out of textures and lighting, and it's been crazy workloads for that show, but the results are phenomenal. I mean, when you're pushing 8 million polys on one scene alone of just intricate detail work on the structures and trying to fit with the time period, and the client was wanting something that was along the lines of French Rococo design, which is that ornate golden detail and just very intricate work. You start pushing the limits of what you can do, but when you can see the final result and it's just the realism's there, you have a hard time telling the difference between, okay, is that a real environment or is that a CG environment? You know you're doing something right.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah, that's
and it's gotten a great response over there in Dubai. So but I think the great thing about Stargate is you've got great talent there. You're working with good artists. There's a lot of good collaboration, and I mean the work speaks for itself for what's done. I mean, Stargate did Heroes back in the day, and I was a huge fan of that show. And now being able to work with the guys that did some of the shots that I thought were awesome is, I mean, it's a dream come true. You really can't. I really can't think of anything better to do. As far as
great.
Work, so.
Yeah, that's really awesome, and it's kind of good. Like I've written a few articles on, like I've mentioned like overtime, like burnout, things like that, and I don't know, I always get like a few of my buddies message me like, man, you should be writing about like what it's really like in this industry, so that way people know about it, rather than like these whole glory topics of like, passion or doing great things. And it's kind of funny because I guess there is so many people who are so jaded about where they work or what they do, which again I think is more to do with their personality type, but it's kind of refreshing to hear people who are like loving what they do day to day, and finding those challenges and fulfillment. So that's really cool to hear.
It's definitely tough.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's definitely tough. You do have those days where you're just pulling your hair out because you're running a sim, it keeps crashing or breaking or something's not looking right, and you're just throwing everything at it to make it work. And the most rewarding part of it is actually seeing the final product. Like for Walking Dead, I will go watch the episode at the pub right down from my house. They'll have a viewing party, and I've seen the show. I know what's going on there, but the rewarding part is to see if see the crowd reaction. Mm-hmm. If the nasty stuff we did gets that response from the crowd, and it's so rewarding when it does. So it makes all the sleepless nights and long hours totally worth it.
That's really cool. And the town that you work in, so I mean, it's kind of a pretty big thing for like regionally where you guys are at. Like everyone's all proud of Walking Dead being done out there.
It is. I mean, it's huge, and you stay in a bubble when you're working on it, so you don't realize how big it is to everybody else until you actually get out there in it, and you're like, wow, okay, people really do love this show. And it's to us, it's work. It's a job.
Yeah.
But to so many other people, I mean, they go crazy over it. They have this convention that goes around, the Walker Stalker Con, that is it's 100% Walking Dead, and I went up there the other weekend to go check it out, and it was just, I mean, a sea of fans, and they just love every bit about it, and you don't really know it until you're out there in it, and it's definitely fun to see it and see how much everybody enjoys the work we do. So it's a definitely rewarding part of it.
Just going back to what you're talking about with obviously, you know, being a big town, like a group thing, and that's super cool. Like one thing I noticed on your Facebook is you get a lot of photos with a lot of the talent that you work with. So is it something too, is like they're kind of spending a lot of time in that area and get to know all the locals, or do they come by the studio a lot?
We actually, our facilities are on the Walking Dead stage lot.
Cool.
So they're always filming around us. Like we're right next to the props department, wardrobe, which is actually convenient for what I do. So if I need to model a weapon, I can walk next door, go grab a prop, and have it sitting right in front of me to model it, and pull the exact textures right off that weapon, so you get the realism when it's in play.
Yeah. Cool.
But the talent's super nice, and the thing is, what I've noticed is it's very family oriented. I mean, you spend time with these people more than your own family, a good portion of the year. So there's a lot of camaraderie. I mean, more so than Walking Dead, but within the Stargate family as well. We're all connected via webcam. So if you have a problem or you're trying to figure out a solution to something, you have immediate access to any artist within the company. And the cool part about that is it's not territorial, where sometimes you can, and this is with a lot of artists, not just in visual effects, but you have those type of people that are very possessive over what they do or the knowledge that they have. And how I view it is we're all artists just trying to create. So the collaboration makes everybody better. Even if it's the person asking for help to someone that knows how to do it, it allows a lot of dialogue to happen, to approach problems from different viewpoints. So having that access, I think, has just made my ability to transition from doing architectural rendering over to full-on visual effects a lot smoother than it would be if, say, going to school or something like that, where you're all kind of on the same level trying to learn from one instructor. You have all these different resources. You have one person that's really good at particle simulations and fluid dynamics, or destruction or uh, smoke effects or stuff like that. You have people that are kind of their niche thing. Like my niche thing is I've been heavily into real flow for the past year and a half. So I think it's just a more conducive environment for artists wanting to grow. And it just makes a better work environment, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's great, man. And sorry to cut you off, but what would be some of the main resources you've found for learning? And again, I think this is like a really valuable subject. So I mean, both going to AI, obviously, but outside of that, it's going to pick up what you've learned. I mean, is there any kind of key things that you kind of fallen back on that have really helped you along the way?
Honestly, I've learned more outside of school than I ever did in school, uh, because I know what I'm asking now. I know what I'm looking for. It's a specific skill. Whereas when you're in school, you don't really know what questions to ask. You get the basics, but it's like school's your training wheels, and the real world is taking them off, and then you got to learn how to ride the bike.
Yeah,
And
right.
my big resource is I've gone to digital tutors for a lot of things. That site's been monumental in helping me grow as an artist. Uh, from picking up different Maya techniques to how to really push V-Ray to its maximum potential, to figuring out how in the hell real flow works. I mean, if you've never done fluid simulations, it's like, okay, where the hell do I start? Okay, there's some particles, but then you start realizing, okay, there's different viscosities of fluids and how they react, and shaping fluids. You get people that have already come across those problems and figured out the solutions to them. So the big one has been digital tours. I did FX PhD stuff. I mean, honestly, I picked up your intros to fume effects for Maya and
Oh, cool.
started going over those. Your crash course and fume was really, really helpful. I mean, a good result over a very short amount of time. So for someone that's just getting into explosions and fire simulations and stuff like that, it was extremely helpful. So I mean, I'll scour the internet trying to find the best resources for whatever problem I'm approaching at that time. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely, like, I've been using Maya since 1.0, and Maya fluids back then were really great, but they kind of quickly got kind of old, and fume effects for Maya now, it's kind of, yeah, it's been really exciting just because it's a lot less work to get really good solid results. So I've definitely loved it, and there's some improvements in the Maya version over the Max one that are faster, especially viewport stuff, so I kind of really dig that as well. But that's super cool. And so one thing you mentioned before is that this season is the first one that you're doing entirely all CG blood. Like, how much has that impacted everything? Has it made it easier or more complicated to do everything?
It's definitely been more complicated, just because you're dealing with sim time, and it's when every shot's needing some dynamic blood or something that just looks better, because you'll use blood elements. We have our own proprietary blood elements that we've shot, and those get you so far. But when you're in a scene and you can wrap a HDR around the blood and you get realistic reflections in it, it just looks better, I think, and you can get more control over it. So it's definitely added to my workload, but I have fun doing it. It's you like your job when you go home and do it just for fun, just to see what you can do. And that's what I'll do. I'll go home, I'll mess with real flow, see if I can get a cool stringy blood element that has good tendrils and stuff, and then figure out a way to apply that to a shot later on. So it's definitely been challenging, but I like it. I think it pushes me as an artist, pushes me as a person to just be better at what I do.
Hmm.
And it's also humbled me into the fact where I know I'm always going to be learning. This is one field where you never stop learning. You're always continuing your education, growing with technology, new software that's coming out, ways to do it better and more efficiently. There's always room to grow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and to me that's the most exciting part because I don't want to get stuck or bored in what I'm doing. And I like making cool shit.
That's kind
That's,
of
that's
cool.
that's what got me into it is I when I was in school, X-Men 2 had come out, and that whole Nightcrawler scene right at the beginning was so
Bam.
badass.
Yeah.
And that was what our instructors were like, don't you want to make that kind of shit? I'm like, hell yeah, that is so cool. That looks awesome. So it's being able to pull from things as a fan, and now when I watch movies and shows, I don't look at it the same way. I'm literally doing breakdowns in my head of, okay, that was a cool particle effect. How did they do that one? Okay, they're using these daemons and these forces on it, and it's changed the whole entire way I look at film and television. While at the same time I'm still a fan, I'm still looking at the technical aspects too, which I'm a techie. I love that kind of stuff. It interests me and challenges me at the same time. So it's like, okay, it challenges me to step up my game to make something that there are other great artists are putting out at the same time.
Yeah, it's for me, like I try my hardest to switch my brain off just because I want to enjoy a movie for what it is. And I do remember when I first got into it, especially like I remember even like Starship Troopers, things like that. I'm like, man, how much rendering power would you need to render all this crap out? And it's definitely been one of those things that, yeah, you at least for me, I try my hardest to kind of not think about it. I just want to enjoy the film. But then like I talked to one of my friends recently. He worked on Apes 2, and that was like one of those films that, like, as much as I wanted to enjoy it, I was just kind of in awe, and I haven't been in awe for a long time as to just how freaking amazing it was, like what Weta had done. And it's kind of those rare moments these days because I think that we're so used to it, and it's kind of we're spoiled by how crazy visual effects can be that it's kind of it's very rare to get overwhelmed. Like, how the hell did they do that? That's amazing. And so when you see that stuff, it's just, yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. And
Oh, that
sorry, go ahead.
that wet hair sim in Apes 2, just how they were handling the wet fur on the
Yep.
on the monkey, I was just that blew my mind. I'm sitting there looking at it going, okay, that's incredible. And I've noticed that we've run into struggles with hair sims that it's hard to get the realism to it, and they just nail it on the head, man. And it was just so impressive to see. And there's not many things that do that these days, but that is definitely one of them that we were all just like, wow, that's great. It was great work.
What was the question I asked was, yeah, what the most challenging shot or episode to date was, like.
I'd say the biggest shot we did to date was the season premiere last season with the raining zombies and helicopter through the roof. There was a lot of different artists that worked together on that shot. It wasn't just one artist to really make that thing sing, because you have, let's see, how many different elements were in there. You had the CG helicopter that's sitting on the roof. You had herd zombies on top. Then I did the debris field that was sitting on top of the rooftop, and then as they start falling through, they're getting hung on rafters, so it's ripping their guts open, and you had fluid sims and soft body dynamics as the guts are falling out. And then as the helicopter starts collapsing through, you have the destruction of the roof, and you've got dust and tiny little particles and even to the point of the whole entire environment was CG. So when the helicopter falls through and hits the ground, our lead 3D artist, Mike Cook, did a phenomenal job of building the environment around it, so that when it hit, it disturbed the shelves, and you had bottles that were just like cleaning bottles falling off the shelves. And it's something small that you really wouldn't notice, but it's those little details that gave the realism to it. And then he ran this amazing fume effect sim over top of it that just it had this like flowing dust cloud that came right at the Talon as they're running away from it. It was just a beautiful looking shot all around. So that was probably the biggest one, most challenging.
And that was about 1 day of work.
God, that one, between all the artists that worked on it, I think that was a month.
Mhm.
That shot took a month, but
This
it was so complicated because you had this big, huge crane move, um, and then it goes into a green screen shot, so you have just all these different elements coming together, and we pulled it off, but it was tough getting there because you're having to match the precision of the camera movements and scale and everything, and then getting the dynamics to move realistically. Uh, it's a lot of working elements, small little elements that make up the bigger picture. So it was a very tough, but the end result was exactly what we were looking for and totally what the client was looking for.
that's great. It's pretty rewarding in the end.
Yeah, definitely rewarding. Because you just look at that and you're like, I can't believe I worked on that shit. That looks, as a 3D artist, you see a certain aspect of it, but when 2D takes over it, they put the final polishes on it that just really make it sing. And to see the end result is just so cool. So cool to see it.
That's awesome. And I guess so. You're the only 3D person in the Georgia office, is that right?
Yes.
So if you call in sick 1 day, basically the Georgia 3D studio is down for the day.
Pretty much. But the cool thing is because of the way we're set up and the interoperability between facilities, it's not just Georgia that does it. There's a lot of artists in LA are working on it as well. So there's not the possessiveness of it. It's
Right.
all shared work. The recognition shared between all artists, and that's probably the greatest part is that when one artist gets recognized, it's a shared recognition, and it really does help out because right now with what I'm dealing with, I'm having some hardware issues. So LA is having to take over some of my stuff to get it done for deadlines and stuff. So while it'd be nice to have more artists here, it's what we got is it works. It totally works, and the clients seem happy. The fans seem happy. So as long as we're keeping everyone happy, just gonna keep doing what we do.
Yeah.
And,
That's cool. Actually, one or two final questions. I guess a big one for me is like, you obviously Walking Dead is a massive fan base. So do you find that because I've even recently with Halo, I've always found that where I'm working on a project and there's things that you want to change to improve on, but it's kind of like, okay, we can't change this because it's going to have a massive effect on the fans. They need to follow this, and they need to keep this consistent because the fans are going to get angry if you change these things around. So do you find you have that where you've got to worry about the input of them as well, like keeping them happy as much as you keep the client happy?
honestly, we leave that up to the writers and producers and the creators of the show. I feel that our responsibility is to take other people's ideas and bring them into a reality. There's an artistic aspect, but we're not the creators. We interpret what the creators are into a visual reality. So I like to leave that responsibility up to the people that are in charge, and it's their vision, and we just help them produce their vision. Yeah. So it's one of those responsibilities I'm glad I don't have.
Sure thing. And when you're at a cocktail party or at the local bar and someone asks you, like, what you do for a living, what's your typical response? That you gut zombies and throw zombie guts around, or?
It's funny because if people didn't know what I did, and like if I'm talking to my friends and like, how was your week or what'd you do? I'm like, oh, I chopped off a head, I split a skull, blah, blah, blah. If people didn't know what I was doing, it would sound really twisted and I'm some serial killer. But when I go out and people ask what I do, I'm a VFX artist.
Yep.
That's what I am. I'm not Walking Dead. I'm an artist that creates, and um, it's I'm not one that really wants to throw that out there because people treat you different, and it's it's work. It's work that I love doing, but it's not one of those things where I need the recognition for it. So I don't really go out there and go, hey, yeah, I work for Walking Dead. It's I'm a VFX artist, and that's all I am.
You don't wear a shirt out like Walking Dead, and then when someone comes up to you, like, "Oh, yeah, laundry day. I didn't know I had the shirt out." But no, that's awesome, man. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just we're lucky to do what we do, and it is a very rewarding area. And I mean, for a lot of us, I mean, we come in because we want to create, and we all have our long-term goals. But it's always usually for most people, I think it's about yeah, doing stuff that's more fulfilling for us, and it's not about the gratification of working on big titles. And I don't know, I think most people I know, you kind of forget for a minute what you're working on, and as you said, you're kind of in your bubble, and it's not about like what everyone else thinks. It's more about you trying to put your own stamp on what you do and make it the best it can be, and that's the more rewarding thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it's more about like, did I do the best I could possibly do? Is it? I find that I'm my own worst critic as far as my work, because you look at something so often, you're like, okay, I see that. There's a little bump here. There's something there. A little artifact sitting over here, but it's still I'm still doing my dream job. This is what I wanted to do since I started getting into 3D. I bought my first 3D program when I was 14 and just started messing with it, and to be able to see that culminate from a teenager's just hobby into making it my career. Not many people can do that and say they were able to do what they dreamed of doing. And I consider myself very, very lucky that Stargate gave me the opportunity to make that happen. Because they didn't have to hire me. I didn't have the animated demo reel. I had stills of architectural projects I did, and they took a chance on me, and hopefully I turned out work that they're happy with, and I continue to make them happy, and I let the work speak for itself. So I think that if I did allow the notoriety of the show that I work on to affect me, it would affect the work, and I don't want that to happen. I want to stay humble and be the best artist I can be, and that's what it's all about to me. It's about the art. It's not really about the fan base. It's really about just being the best artist I can be.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, sounds like you're living the dream. That's for sure, and that's awesome. Like, do you have any final advice for anyone who's kind of starting out and they want to, get their career going and find their passionate job that they want to do?
Find a niche and something that you're passionate about, something that you'll want to do on your own, not because someone pays you to do it, but because you love actually doing it. If you're into 3D, pick a part of 3D that you like. If you love lighting, if you love modeling, if you love animating, really dig into the thing that drives you, that gives you passion. Because if you're passionate about what you do, you're going to go home at the end of every night happy that you may be frustrated with your day, but you're going to be happy that that's your job. You're not miserable going to work or whatever. You thoroughly enjoy every aspect of it, and keep working. I mean, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's you work crazy hours, and it's tough. It's definitely tough, but in the end, I feel you're you're more satisfied and happier as a person if you love what you do. So my advice is find something that you love in the area that you want to work in, and go at it as hard as you can.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, like that's really solid. I mean, I was actually having that conversation last night with someone about, even just from a job perspective, if you can define yourself, like, then people can categorize you. If you say, I'm a lighter and I also do effects and character animation, and you're talking to a recruiter or anyone, they're not exactly going to know how to place you. But if you say, this is what I do, and I also have strengths in these areas too, but at least then you find a way to define yourself, and they can then be like, okay, that's the kind of person, you're that guy, and that way when they need someone in that area, they can come to you. But yeah, I think either way, you gotta learn your craft and get good at one thing, get very strong in one area. So I mean, I think it's really solid advice. That's great. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate your time. It's been really awesome to chat and shoot the shit about the stuff.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And another thing, I think what you do for the CG community is, I mean, it's incredible, dude. You help out so many artists that not many people are willing to do, and I mean, all your shit looks fantastic. So it's great what you do for the community. I mean,
thanks, man.
You really should. You're more pivotal and helpful to so many artists. You have no idea. So thanks for what you do, man. It really is helpful to our industry and moving artists along and helping them perfect. So I really appreciate it, man.
That's awesome. No, thank you. That's really cool. I appreciate that. It's makes me melt. That's great, dude. I might be passing through Georgia in a week or two. So if I do head through your area, I'll definitely look you up if you want to grab a beer or something.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'll be around.
Cool, dude. All right, well, let's talk soon, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, if you want to enter the contest, I will be giving out a couple of free memberships to Digital Tutors in the end of the month, so well worth it. Just follow the instructions in the show notes. Next episode, I'm going to be following on with more career advice. This is going to be more specifically related to job interviews, and there's a lot of cool tactics with this upcoming episode. Last episode, like I said, it was more about mindsets, and definitely a bit of a different subject for sure. But again, for a lot of people who do struggle with this, I hope this has been really valuable to you. I've received a lot of really cool, very supportive, very awesome emails about it. But next episode is going to be a good one. It's got lots of cool stuff to do with negotiating and also with getting the upper hand, getting a lot out of the interviews that you go for. So check it out, and I'll see you guys next episode. Thanks again, and please write a review on iTunes. Thank you again.